I said, "What about my heart?" He said, "Tell me what you hold inside it." I said, "Pain and sorrow." He said, "Stay with it. The wound is the place where the light enters you." RUMI. And I found a different interpretation of these words, because obviously they're all translated. Your doctor must have a broken leg to doctor others. Your defects are the ways that glory gets manifested. Wow. Whoever sees clearly what's diseased in him or herself begins to gallop on the way. Don't turn your head. Keep looking at the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. That's a kind of bit more nuanced than the first translation. The other day, you know that I write poetry. The wound and the light. The wound is where we feel broken. It is the seat of our vulnerability. The hard shell of the protective ego has been breached, and that cracking has changed everything. For the light of our humanity and the light of our divinity and the light of love, which are all the same light, shines into us, healing our sense of victimhood and separation, and through us into the world as a beacon for others. So I've sort of, the wound is, it's kind of essentially, I was thinking, it's essentially an idea that we're broken. Less than, unworthy. It's a semi-inherited, semi-affirmed, semi-consolidated idea that of somehow separation. I can't be or do ... until this thing, this wound problem is healed. Sort of essentially a sort of belief in imperfection, a belief in our imperfection. Sort of, and there's no dismissing that as a very human quality, but it's a quality that is like the driver of so many actions in the world. Maybe in the search for wholeness, in the search for healing, or maybe as the driver to run further away from the wound that we, you know, are carrying. Some of these wounds are real. I seem to spend my days at the moment reading endless books about mainly Americans, actually, who come from utterly broken ancestry, families, parents, where the systemic or violent or terrible abuse has happened and resulted in all sorts of addictions and dysfunctionality, terrible relationships. And I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. You know, on the rich level of society, on the poor level of society, it makes no odds. Same wound, just has more money to it or something like that. So it's not, you know, I'm not saying any of that, this is easy. You know, we sort of come into this existence, and things happen, things that are things that somehow start to break us off from our sense of our unconscious or natural, innate sense of wholeness, that there's nothing wrong. Maybe we're born with the idea there's nothing wrong. So slowly this becomes affirmed, and it develops into a wound. And we believe that wound is us. And then we go on the search. And this is one of the reasons why non-duality is a blessing in many ways. I mean, and when I say non-duality, I mean an embodied non-duality, not a kind of belief system that says there's no suffering, or there's no world, or there's no this, or there's no that, and everything is kind of perfect, but a very embodied, very humanistic non-duality that allows everything to come into unity within, because unity is seen, or love is seen, as the only perennial reality that there is, really. So then everything that's wounded, everything that feels broken, everything that seemed so fractured is allowed to fall into that openness. And there's a journey for us. To allow everything to come home is almost the journey of a lifetime. But there's no other journey, because that is the journey of our lives. To be born in a sense as wholeness and love, to forget because of the human experience and the incessant nature of the human experience, to forget that essential wholeness, to get lost in the duality and the dual of things, to get lost in the brokenness and the wound and all of its manifestations and its consequences, and then to realize something's not right. I've become fractured from myself, and then to go on the journey to see if it's possible before we die, because when we die, we return to the wholeness that we were anyway. What's the problem? The problem is it possible? Is it possible to realize that in the gap between birth and death? That's the grooviest question of all. That's where the light enters you, in your humanity. It is our humanity. It is. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Because when we're trying to defend ourselves against the pain of our own wounds, or take our own wounds out on the world, which is essentially the same thing, we're sort of upholding some strange sense of self that must shatter for us to realize we never lost it, and we always are it. And it requires one of my favorite qualities, which is humility. My God, the world could do with a dose of humility. Humility is the one of the greatest insults to the ego. It doesn't know what to do with humility, because humility is true. It cannot be faked. You could try it as much as you like, and I know people have tried it, and you see it all the time in politicians. And it doesn't have any sense. It doesn't have any depth. It doesn't have any juice. It doesn't have any real truth. So as long as we're separated from our own truth, then we might believe these idiots. But when we start to really feel our own truth, and all of you know this, otherwise you wouldn't be on this call, because you've already tasted it. You already know it. You might be established in it. As the bullshit detector comes to life, you start saying, no, something's not right there. Humility is humility. Humility is where the light gets in. So it's like, what's to wait for? When the embodied non-duality, for want of a better term, starts becoming the real search, the true search, then these ideas of the shadow over there, or wholeness over there, or less than, feeling less than. The whole this notion of unworthiness, this notion of I can't really be who I am, or even offer my gifts or purpose to the world until I've healed something, or I've reached something, or I've gotten rid of something, or I've starts to fall away, because that level of consciousness somehow is seen as the problem. Falling into a deeper level of consciousness. The level is not the right word. It's not. But falling inside, falling inside where the softness is, where the tenderness is, where the real juice, where even the broken heart feels like it is. The heart's not broken. Heart can never be broken, really. It can feel broken. It can open. It can kind of open catastrophically sometimes if it's been sort of, denied its water. If it's been denied all its life, it can really be extremely painful. But that's not broken. That's broken open. So I think I'm sort of making a plea for the juice of life. I wrote another poem, when your natural state, when your wounds become your gifts and your imperfections become doorways to love, you have returned to the wholeness that is your natural state, which is love.